Welcome to your Mission Group's Fall 2020 kickoff meeting. So whether you've been coming back together after a break, you've been breaking for a while, or just maybe you've been starting over the summer to meet more regularly as a group, or if you're just taking a pit stop between group studies, I'm so glad that you could be here and that we could do this together. And I hope this kickoff meeting can give your group the start or the restart or just like the shot in the arm of energy that you need to get the most out of this fall together. And I think now, maybe more than ever, it is really obvious how much what we do in our groups matters. After months and months of normalcy being thrown out the window and social distancing and lockdowns, it has been really obvious to me that what we do week after week with each other, becoming real and better and closer friends who are helping each other change and grow and look more and more like Jesus in our everyday lives, like that matters so much. And I know that for some of us, as the world has been in just full-on topspin over the last few months, it's been easy to get lost in that all. And so maybe you've isolated or pulled away from people more than you would have hoped. Or maybe it's been on the other side for you. You've struggled to get what you need relationally and socially, not because of lack of effort, but because of this new frustrating COVID reality. But either way, the important thing is that you are here now, and no matter what it's looked like up until now, I think we all have the same opportunity to make this group a priority over the next few months. And I think it's that kind of commitment to your group, but more importantly, to the people in your group. That's the thing that unlocks new potential for spiritual growth and health personally for us. And so if we are going to make that kind of commitment to each other and to our group, I think it's important to start with a really clear vision of what exactly we're committing to. And that vision is super simple, but it never runs out of potential at the same time. And it's summed up by three easy words: know, care, and grow. And that is it. We know, we care, and we grow. It is like the blueprint for any healthy group. Everything starts with knowing each other deeply. Even before COVID, we had this hyper-connected world, and yet we were experiencing epidemic levels of loneliness. In 2019, I looked up some stats. 61% of Americans described themselves as lonely. 58% sometimes or always felt like no one knew them well. 52% sometimes or always felt alone. 47% sometimes or always felt that their relationships were not meaningful. And 21% they said they had no real close friends. So clearly being known by people that we trust and love is not the norm in our world. And maybe it hasn't been the norm for you for any amount of time in your life. And there's a pastor named Tim Keller that said something that I think is really important to remember. To be loved but not known is comforting but superficial. To be known and not loved is our greatest fear. But to be fully known and truly loved is, well, a lot like being loved by God. And that is the thing. The way that we know and love each other in the good and the bad, and the pretty and the ugly, and the energetic and the exhausted in any different season of life. It's not just nice to be known and loved like that. It's often the way that we best understand and actually experience the love of God. And when that happens, when we're known and loved in that way and we work hard to make that a priority, then we get to care for each other and it becomes easy. We get to be the church for each other. We get to share in the hurt and the healing also. We get to actually materialize and be the presence of God in each other's lives. We get to be the answers to the prayers that we're praying for our friends. We carry each other's burdens when they're too much to carry alone. This is like the meals brought over, the visits to the hospital, the last minute calls for help in a jam, the connection to the right plumber that you actually trust, whatever it is. It's also, though, the random text to just check in. It's the invitation over for dinner or out to an outside socially distanced place for dinner. It's like the listening well during a group meeting. It's asking good questions that show someone you actually care about what's going on underneath the surface in the brain or in somebody's heart. It's listening a few extra minutes after group out on the sidewalk or on a phone call with somebody after the Zoom call when somebody's had just one of those kind of weeks. We say a lot around groups that when everyone has someone to care for, that everyone actually gets cared for. And that's exactly it. Whenever I see a group lean in and choose to give what they have, every person also gets way more than they could have hoped for. And it works that way every time. And that is when we grow. And I mean really grow. When we're known and cared for like that, we grow in the stuff that matters most, like love and joy and peace and patience and kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. We grow into the people that God designed us to be because we're known and we're cared for, and because we're learning how to better know and care for others as well. And then we bring that, what we experience in our group, we start to bring that everywhere else in our world. And so that's the vision, to create a space together where everyone can be fully known and accepted for who they are, cared for effectively and in meaningful ways, and then everyone has the chance to grow into more of the person that God created them to be. And if every one of us chooses to live on this blueprint, I think that like when we choose to actually lean into those simple three things on our own for each other, then things change in our groups and in our families and in our friendships and workplaces. And I think that when we do that, we see a whole lot of God's kingdom coming into focus around us in life. So for the rest of our time together in this fall kickoff meeting, we are going to do something fun to take some good new ground in the first area of that blueprint. We're going to get to know each other in a new way using a tool called the 5 love languages. Now, you may have heard this already. You may very well have taken the test, and it's pretty intuitive, and you'll probably won't be surprised by your answers at all. But the beauty of putting some language to not just our own, but to other people's wiring and personality like this is that when I actually know this about someone else, I can show them I care in the ways that they're most likely to fully receive it. And I think that's a really powerful thing. And I want to help us do that together as we kick off this fall season for ourselves. And so take a few minutes as a group, follow the prompts on the next few screens in the video to take the test. And then I will be back to give you a quick rundown of what the 5 love languages are and then what we'll do next. All right, so you've taken the test. Now I'm guessing you probably have a pretty clear picture of what your primary love language is and how it plays out. And hopefully you shared a little bit about what everybody else's primary love language is also. But we're going to run through them real quick so you can better understand the other ones, not just the one that you probably understand pretty well, but the ones that maybe aren't as intuitive or natural for you personally. A couple disclaimers. Number one, yes, this is a great tool for a romantic relationship, but no, that is not the only relationship at which it matters, not by a long shot. This matters a lot in our friendships and family relationships also. And number two, no love language is better or worse than any of the others. They're just better or worse to you personally. There are no wrong answers here. We can all, I think, get better at appreciating when somebody gives us love or care in a language that's maybe not as meaningful to us, but it's not a bad thing also to have a particular way that you receive love the most naturally. So there are your disclaimers. First up is words of affirmation. If this is you, it is not real to you until the words hit the air, right? It's not the thought that counts. It's actually saying the thought out loud that counts. So you probably express your gratitude and even your needs to someone else in a positive and intentional way, always with your words. I appreciate your help. You did a great job yesterday. Things like verbal compliments and encouraging words, calling out what you see and admire, those make you soar, right? Thank you for listening so attentively. Keep up the hard work. I've been thinking about you a lot recently. Tone of voice and authenticity also make a huge difference to you probably as well. Next up is quality time. Time spent with another person with your undivided attention focused on them. This can happen in groups, but it's probably best in one-on-one or like 3-person situations. The smaller, the better, usually for you. So it's togetherness, which is focused attention, and then also quality conversation, which is not focused on what you have to transmit to the other person, but what you're taking in and understanding about them. Those are the two kind of main elements that make up quality time most often. So things like just sitting around and talking over a cup of coffee, hugely meaningful, especially when you maintain eye contact. You don't listen and do something else at the same time. You flip your phone not just over, but just put it all the way away so that you're not waiting for the next buzz. You listen for feelings, you observe body language, you don't interrupt. Even things like taking a walk or doing something you both enjoy, doing something at the same time, just for the purpose of being together, means the world to you. Number 3 is receiving gifts. And for the record, this absolutely does not mean that a gifts person is materialistic. That's really important to know. A gift is any tangible item that reminds you that someone was thinking of you when they gave it to you. So instead of the thought that counts or the words about the thought, it's the thing that represents the thought, right? This is, I think, where it's the thought that counts actually came from. These gifts don't have to cost any money. They don't have to take a lot of time or effort to create. They just have to show thoughtfulness and remind somebody that you care and that you know them specifically. So it's a handmade or store-bought card at the right time when somebody needs it. It's flowers. It is the carefully chosen snack or meal or special Starbucks order that you know somebody likes because you bothered enough to write it down at some point. It's remembering birthday gifts. Christmas is like your Super Bowl. I mean, gifts are the thing that helps you actually pass love from your heart to somebody else, and it means the most to you when it's in the form of an item that you can hold on to. Number 4 is acts of service. This is a way of expressing love or care for someone by serving them, doing something for them, doing something with them, or helping them to accomplish a task without expecting anything in return. So if this is you, you might feel like often actions speak louder than words. That would make a lot of sense to you. It's bringing somebody coffee, again, because coffee is true love. It's my love language. Cleaning up a mess for somebody or just alongside them. Running an errand for somebody when they can't quite fit it into their schedule. It's even the smallest acts of service that can mean the world to somebody and show very clearly to them that you care. And finally, there's physical touch. Just quick disclaimer, it's not just men and it's also not all men, right? So physical touch is a really important love language. It's also pretty straightforward too. It's expressing love by having some sort of positive physical contact with another person. And by no means does it have to be romantic in any way. Physical touch can be especially important even in times of high stress or in a crisis situation. It's things like hugs, handshakes, high fives, pats on the back, or a simple hand on a shoulder while you pray with somebody. If this is your love language, it's the smallest bits, like the tiniest glimpses of physical contact that's really positive, that are really meaningful. And so now that you know what the 5 languages are, and then also what your primary love language is, have a quick conversation as a group about what knowing this about yourself, but more importantly, knowing it about each other, can mean for you as a group. The last portion of our fall kickoff meeting, I asked Mike to share with us for a few minutes about what's possible when we have a strong foundation of Christ-centered friendships in our lives. See, great groups aren't the actual goal of great groups. Great friendships are, and they always have been. The group experience is just the strategy or the method that we use to foster the connections between us and create those friendships so that we can know each other deeper and care for each other better and grow in our faith in real tangible ways. It's just the method, but it's always been the friendships themselves that are the goal. We were created for those. And so Mike is going to share about some of the most important and impactful relationships that he's had in his life and what those relationships have taught him about meaningful spiritual growth. So listen to this, and then we'll come back together for our last bit together.
Well, what is up, Mission? Man, some of the heroes of Mission are hanging out on this and listening to this. I'm so grateful to be a part of this church and everything that God is doing in and through the people that make up Mission. I think you probably know this, but the mission of Mission is to help people find and follow Jesus. And man, there are heroes in this that are watching this, that are part of our circles, that are part of our groups, that are part of helping people. Even if you're like, dude, I just attend the group and it helps me, I would want you to know you're a hero, because even like being part of a group helps people find and follow Jesus. So I know there are countless hours of preparation that go into this. I'm just so grateful for the way that we are investing our lives to help other people and to show up for people, and also to even grow ourselves up that way. So super proud. This is one of my favorite circles, one of my favorite communities of people. Privileged and honored to be the lead pastor of Mission. And I think, like, for me, it's been crazy, like, how God has used people in my life to help grow me up. Like, and so, man, I think we can underestimate sometimes our role in showing up and like being present for God to be able to maybe use our presence and to help somebody else's life. But in my life, man, my life would not be the same without people that God had. It's almost like He uniquely put them in my life at just the right time for just what I needed. So I think back to, like, I didn't grow up in church, so I think back to when I was in 4th grade and moved to Owasso, Oklahoma, and I had never even been to Owasso, Oklahoma. I'd spent the summer with my dad in Cincinnati, and I show up 2 days before school starts, and I move to a new house, and then the school starts, and bus 10 comes around, and it's this yellow bus, and Norma was driving it, and she was not a nice woman. And so I'm walking out, and this 4th grader, and I have this Forrest Gump moment. You know, I'm walking on the bus, and I'm like, literally, like, every seat has multiple people in it. I'm like, what am I going to do? But there was one seat to sit in, and then, like, my friend Jeff Henson said, you can sit here. I didn't know who he was at the time, but he ends up being the best man in my wedding. I was the best man in his wedding. He's the first person that ever invited me to church, the first person that we ever talked about Jesus with, that I ever talked about Jesus with. Like, God uniquely placed him in my life. It was really important that I would sat on that bus in that seat and went to that neighborhood that day. I firmly believe that. Another guy named Ryan Brisley. So I had 2 best men in my wedding, and I was the best man in their wedding. It's like God, he was smarter than I was. He's a better athlete than I was. But God had put us next to each other all through school, and we went to the same church. And he was the kind of person to help me grow up and even understanding the Bible, understanding what Jesus was. And he was just an incredibly great friend. I start looking back all the way through my life, like every season of my life. I won't bore you with it because you don't really care about my life that much. But when you think through, like, even the friendship that I have with TD, I met him when I was 17 years old. When I think through, like, our relationship with Jim, how God uniquely put him in my life. And I start thinking through guys like Casey and Dustin and Jay and Brian and Brent and Dan and Mark and Clint, and just all the ways in different seasons and phases of my life that God has uniquely placed people next to me and in my circles for stuff that I needed to grow up in and needed from them. And man, it's encouraging. So I don't want you to ever lose sight of how God has used people in all of our lives to grow us up. And I don't want us to lose sight of how important it is to invest in people in our world, because you have no idea how God is going to use you and use that relationship for His good and His kingdom. And just a couple things as we're thinking through how the importance of circles and how we want to invest. I would just want us to remind us that, man, God uses people to help people grow. Like, we're not some monastic society. Like, we're not a bunch of monks that are just kind of doing our own thing with God. We are actually a part of a community of people. The church has always been the group of people together on mission to help people find and follow Jesus. So, man, you have no idea how God has used people in your life or how He would want to use you in other people's lives. So God always uses people to help people grow. The second thing that's been helpful for me is that God sets the lonely in families. That's the truth from Scripture. You may have an awesome family, and I hope you do, and you may have come from a family that's awesome. I hope you did. And if you did, that's a huge blessing. But most of our world doesn't come from a family that is in the healthiest sense of the term. And so God would use people like us in the way that we invest in circles and the way we invest in safe environments to set the lonely in families, in healthy families, where they could see conflict resolution happen well, where they could see love happen well, where they could know each other and be known, where they can celebrate each other and be celebrated, where like they can serve each other and be served. Like those safe places, God would use our circles that we're helping create to set the lonely in those kind of families, because that's been His promise from His Word about what the church is supposed to be about. Another thing that's been helpful for me as we're just resetting some of this stuff is it's always helpful for me to remember that obedience is way more important than knowledge. Like we can just try to get together and read the Bible to know what it says and kill in a game of Bible Jeopardy. That would be great. We can do that. But it has no power unless we let it transform our actual life and how we actually live and how we actually put it into practice. So when we're thinking about the Great Commission that we're called to, we're called to teach everyone to obey. We're not called to teach everyone to know everything, but we're called to teach people and help people obey and come under authority and actually live out the way of the kingdom that God has called us to. So obedience is always greater than knowledge when we're thinking through our circles. And I wanted to say too that presence is always greater than perfection. Always. Showing up in the moment without knowing what to say, but being present is way more important than having the perfect sermon to give. And I like to give sermons. Jody gives perfect ones. I just like to give them. But showing up, my presence, actually being present is way more important than my perfection or my having all the answers or my knowing what to do in the moment. And so as we're showing up for people, even when it's difficult, even when they take advantage of us, even when they say they're going to be there and they're not there, even when you make food and they don't eat it or ever offer to make it, we show up and we want to be present for people, not just perfect or have the perfect answer, because that pays off in the end. And lastly, if I was just thinking through, just reminding us what I would want us to remember is that God uses people to help people grow, that God sets the lonely in families, that obedience is always more important than knowledge, and that our presence is more important than our perfection. And then lastly, I would say that we want to be the kind of people that bring the real us to the table. Like, what we have to offer the world is nothing more than a transformed life from the inside out. That's what we have to offer. Like, we can't fake it until we make it. We can't act better than we are. We just got to bring the real version of our marriage, the real version of our parenting, the real version of our soul, the real version of us to the table every time. And hopefully it's surrendered under what God is transforming us to be. But when we bring that real us to the table, and that's powerful, because all we have to offer, our circles, our world, our friends, our family, the people that we're, our neighbors, our teammates, that we're all trying to help people find and follow Jesus, all we have to offer really is a changed life and the experience that we've had with Jesus, because he rescues and saves. Man, again, heroes to me in the kingdom. Grateful for the way that you invest. So proud to be part of this church. Much love all. Peace.
Well, I hope this meeting has been a good reminder of why what we do week after week is so important. We're going to finish out talking through a few ways that you can get the most out of your time together this fall as a group, and then also have the most impact on each other's lives and growth as well. And first of all, though, a reminder, the success of your group will not depend on the quality of your leader or the skills of your facilitators or the quality of the content that you use. The success of your group will always depend on your commitment to the people in it. And that's true every time. It always starts and comes back to that personal responsibility. So take that really seriously. And that's no matter what you think you have to offer to the people in your group, because it's your commitment to walking alongside them. That's one of the most primary things that they need to follow Jesus well. And it just so happens to be one of the primary ways that God will grow your personal faith as well. And so starting there, let's talk about where you might head next over the course of the fall. That blueprint of know and care and grow, that works best when we're intentional about moving deeper into each one kind of at all times and bouncing back and forth as needed. So it's asking questions consistently like, how can we know each other more deeply and take the next step of vulnerability with each other? How can we care for each other more effectively, carry each other's burdens more tangibly? Who has the most burdens right now, and how can we support them? Usually that shifts around over time. Where do we need to grow? Where do we need to encourage each other to live and love and think and act more like Jesus in our everyday lives? So we're always asking those questions, and there are a lot of ways that you can answer them. And I will never pretend that anybody else can know how to answer those for you. Those are all things that you figure out together as a group. But there are two things that I would challenge you to consider that I think would help. And the first thing is this. Pick at least your next group study, or potentially the next 2 or 3. for this fall. Now, the beauty of knowing each other so well and being committed to caring for each other is that you can choose group studies based on your real needs as a group. Not everyone has the same needs at the same time, but there's often some clear crossover or ways that you could serve each other or go on the same path as a group. So we just finished revamping our library of group studies. It's linked on this Fall Kickoff page, and it's also always there on the groups button of the app. And I'm really excited about it. There's some incredible stuff, incredible journeys to go on together. You've got a bunch of different categories, but then also different types of studies as well. You've got videos and books and workbooks with different levels of engagement and all of it. So in your final conversation in this meeting, after I'm done here, you'll walk through a quick process of navigating through your options, figuring out what you need personally right now, and like what would change about what you want to see different about your life this fall, and then kind of bring that to the group level and help each other choose some content. And then of course, also you can always ask for help. We'd love to talk to you about finding the right option for you as a group. And the second challenge is to consider making more room for more people to be known and cared for and grown. I see over and over that something like 8 to 12 is like a sweet spot for most groups. It's different for everybody, but especially if you're under 8 on a regular basis, I would challenge you to see that as an opportunity to bring new people into your circle. So to use the friendships that you've worked really hard to create as a safe and solid foundation to invite other people into. Two of the best ways you can do that as a group are going to be really simple this fall. The first one is that you probably know people at Mission, or even not at Mission, who are just waiting for an invite to your group. People who need a place to be known and accepted, and all it takes is a few people in a group to make those invites, and then like, boom, brand new group experience, brand new stories, brand new rush of energy, brand new encouragement, especially when you've got like a specific date, even a little bit into the future, where you know you're starting a new study or series. You can invite multiple people at the same time to that one start date. It's like a fresh start of a new thing instead of like people trickling in at different times and trying to jump onto a moving train. It's a really effective way to use the relationships and acquaintances and kind of the outer rim or friendships that you already have and be able to like bring them into the circle you've worked hard to make safe and solid. The second way that you can make room for more people this fall will be our group campaign that we're going to do probably mid-fall. So it's going to look really similar to the Philippians campaign that we did this summer. We're still confirming the content, but we'll most likely be 3 different options that you can do, all starting at the same time. So you'll pick between one of them. Something in the book of the Bible, something to help people with their relationships, and something to help people with their finances. Still waiting on the specifics, but more info to come on that. But if you go that route and then you open up your group on one of those tracks, people will sign up for your group based on availability and some other attributes, and they will join you for that study, which will most likely be between 4 to 6 weeks. And then you can just invite them to continue on with you afterwards. So it's a really safe, easy access way for them to jump in, gives them an easy out, but an incredibly welcomed invitation to continue afterward. However it works best for your group, just know that our circles and our friendships really don't just exist for us. And that's true across the board when we're following Jesus. The blessing that we have is always meant to be passed on to the next person that needs it. And so our relationships and our groups also exist so that more and more people can experience the real and important and meaningful friendships that can help them change, just as we've experienced personally. So whatever the next step is for you as a group, go ahead and talk about that now together before you wrap up. Thanks again for being a part of this circle. Thank you for caring for each other, for working hard to know each other, and making Mission more of a family for the way that you care for each other.